Every morning I follow the same route, as if the city itself has written my schedule. Manhattan greets me with its familiar chaos. Yellow cabs honk impatiently in traffic, coffee carts release steam into the crisp air, strangers rush by with phones clutched in their hands, never looking at one another. My heels strike the pavement in steady rhythm, the leather briefcase bumps against my hip, and the paper cup of latte warms my palm. Everything is predictable. Everything feels safe. My life is a perfect chain of meetings, contracts, hearings, victories. I pride myself on control, on order, on never leaving space for accidents. And yet there is one sound that always accompanies my mornings. The saxophone. Somewhere down below, in the subway, under the flicker of fluorescent lights and the rumble of trains, it drifts upward like smoke, curling into me when I least expect it. For years I dismissed it, treating it as just another noise of the city. A soundtrack I never asked for. But today something shifted. The melody was different. It was not just random music, it touched me, as if fingers had brushed bare skin. It was sorrow and sensuality blended into a single breath. Without realizing it, I slowed my steps. My grip on the cup tightened, my heart thudded faster. The music seemed to know me, to see me, though that should have been impossible. I lifted my eyes. And I saw him. A man with dark hair falling carelessly across his forehead stood with eyes closed, playing. His body swayed slightly, as if he were part of the instrument. His fingers moved over the brass so tenderly that heat rushed to my cheeks. For a moment, I imagined those hands on me. Startled, I caught my breath. I wasn't supposed to think like that about a stranger. And yet, this morning, I wondered if he had been playing for me all along. That morning began as always. I bought my coffee, felt the caramel sweetness on my lips, prepared myself for the flood of cases and arguments that awaited me. Manhattan moved around me in its usual rhythm, cold air, the clatter of trains, faceless crowds flowing past. My life was ordered, neat, predictable, and I clung to that order like a lifeline. But this time, something was different. When I reached for my briefcase, which I had set down beside a bench, I noticed something lying on it, a folded piece of paper. At first I frowned, thinking someone had carelessly tossed trash onto my belongings. But my hand unfolded it almost against my will. The word struck me with shocking force: "Your eyes are the color of midnight jazz." I froze. The crowd swirled around me, the train roared, the smell of coffee hung in the air, but I no longer heard or smelled any of it. Only that sentence existed. It hit me harder than any courtroom argument ever had. Eyes the color of midnight jazz. How could he see something in me that I had long since forgotten? My cheeks flushed. I slipped the note quickly into my briefcase, as if it were contraband, a dangerous secret. My heart raced so violently it almost hurt. My fingers trembled. I forced myself to look up, and met his gaze. He stood a little apart, saxophone in hand, dark hair shadowing his forehead, lips pressed to the instrument but eyes locked on mine. Calm, steady, as if he had been waiting for me to notice. I turned sharply, forcing myself to walk on. But in that single glance, my world had cracked. I was no longer just Clara Bennett, Manhattan attorney. I was a woman who had been seen. And that frightened me more than any case ever could. I repeated to myself all day that it meant nothing. Just a note. Just a line. Just a stranger's whim. That's what I told myself while signing contracts, speaking firmly to clients, laughing politely at colleagues' jokes. But inside, something had changed. The folded slip of paper weighed on me from inside my briefcase, heavier than any legal file. Whenever I was alone, I couldn't resist. I pulled it out, unfolded it, traced the words: "Your eyes are the color of midnight jazz." I read it until the letters blurred. Those words followed me home, invaded my dreams, quickened the restless beating of my heart. The next morning, I swore I wouldn't look at him. I hurried down the subway stairs, gripping my coffee so tightly my fingers ached. But the moment the first notes of his saxophone filled the air, my resolve shattered. My eyes sought him, found him, clung to him. He stood as always, but now every movement felt deliberate. His fingers danced along the cold metal with impossible tenderness. I imagined, recklessly, how it would feel if they touched my skin. His lips pressed against the mouthpiece, and heat flared low in my stomach. The thought frightened me. I walked faster, but the music followed, clung to me like invisible hands. Even later, in my glass office high above the city, I still heard it. The echo of his melody pulsed inside me, etched into my bloodstream. This man, this stranger, was unraveling the threads of my carefully ordered life. And the most dangerous part was that I was beginning to want him to. That morning, our eyes met for the first time. It happened suddenly, yet felt inevitable. I had been searching for him with my gaze for days. I tried to walk past without slowing, but when he lifted his eyes from the instrument, they locked with mine. The noise of the station faded, leaving only the two of us in the charged air of his music. His smile was confident, a little reckless, yet warm. The smile of someone who knows he's been noticed. My heart stumbled. I wanted to keep walking, to preserve my cold composure, but his voice stopped me. "You smell like vanilla today," he said. I froze. Such simple words, spoken in that husky voice, felt like a hand brushing across my skin. Heat bloomed in my chest, and I tucked my hair behind my ear, trying to mask my reaction. "Do you always speak to strangers like this?" I asked, summoning my courtroom tone. He tilted his head, eyes glinting. "No. Only the ones who deserve it." My hand tightened around the briefcase handle. It felt like the only thing anchoring me to reality. But in that moment, I realized he had already pierced my armor. His voice, his smile, his music, they were stripping me bare. I felt exposed, not in body but in soul. For the first time in years, I was not just an attorney, not the untouchable Clara Bennett. I was a woman. And the most terrifying part was that I wanted to lose control. That evening I sat by my apartment window, gazing out at Manhattan glowing in the dark. Streets pulsed with headlights, neon signs painted the night, and voices rose from below. Yet in my mind, there was only one sound, his saxophone. It haunted me, filling every corner of my thoughts. On the table lay the note. Separate from all my legal papers, as if it didn't belong to my world at all, yet it was the most precious thing I owned. I unfolded it again, ran my fingers over the words. I imagined his hands on the instrument, strong, steady, yet sensitive. Then I imagined them gliding over my body. The thought made me shiver. Heat surged through me, low and deep, impossible to suppress. I leaned back, closed my eyes. In the darkness, I saw his silhouette, his smile, felt his breath at my neck. My lips parted, trembling. I tried to resist, but desire only grew. It was forbidden, this hunger I had buried beneath years of discipline, sharp suits, courtroom victories. Now it rose like fire, alive and unstoppable. I slipped off my heels, stretched across the bed. The city outside hummed, but inside I surrendered to the melody in my head. His music carried me, wrapped me, consumed me. And I knew then, this man, still nameless in my life, had already touched me more deeply than anyone ever had. The next morning I woke before the alarm, my body still remembering the music that had carried me through the night. I lingered in front of the mirror, studying a woman I hardly recognized. Usually I dressed quickly, suits, pressed blouses, neat hair, nothing wasted. But today was different. Today, I wanted to be seen. I sifted through dresses, chose a softer shade of lipstick, left my hair loose over my shoulders. Every choice felt deliberate, intimate. And then I realized the truth. I wasn't dressing for a client, or for colleagues. I was dressing for him. For the stranger in the subway who was no longer just a stranger. For the man whose music had slipped under my skin. The crowd in the station swirled around me, but I noticed no one else. I heard him even before I saw him. The saxophone poured through the tunnel, the melody warmer than the morning air. And when his eyes found mine, the music shifted, softened, grew tender. As though he wrapped me in it. I dropped a bill into his case, pretending to be casual. He bowed his head, then lifted it, his voice low and certain. "Thank you, Clara." My heart lurched. My name. On his lips, it was not just a word, it was a spell. My breath caught as if the world had tilted. How did he know? I couldn't stop myself. I stepped closer, my voice trembling. "How do you know my name?" He lowered the instrument, resting it casually at his side. That same calm smile curved his lips. "I listen to more than music," he said. "People speak, they call out names. One morning, I heard yours. And it sounded like it belonged to a melody." His words sent a shiver through me. I tried to step back, to regain balance, but he reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled napkin from a cafe. "For you," he said simply. I hesitated, then took it. My fingers unfolded the thin paper, and my heart nearly stopped. In slanted writing, "You are my favorite song." Everything blurred, the trains, the voices, the harsh lights. Only his eyes remained, steady, knowing. I clutched the napkin, realizing it was worth more to me than every contract I'd ever signed. And in that moment I understood, he was no longer just a man playing in a subway. He was becoming my risk. My new story. My jazz. We began to talk. At first, only fragments, weather, coffee, the chaos of the station. But each word vibrated like a string pulled taut between us. "My name is Ethan," he told me one morning. The sound of it lodged inside me, as though it had been waiting for me all along. I asked why he played here, underground. He shrugged lightly, brushing his thumb across the brass. "Because people here are real. Tired, hurried, unguarded. No one pretends. And because, this is where you walk by." I laughed nervously, but my chest tightened. His words weren't flattery. They were truth. His gaze held mine, patient, unflinching, as though he could see what I'd tried to hide even from myself. My hand gripped the briefcase tighter, the symbol of my rigid life. Yet deep down, a longing stirred, to let it go. To free my hands for something else. For him. In that moment, I knew my life had shifted. Among the rumble of trains and the blur of strangers, I had found a man who made me feel more than any courtroom victory ever could. That evening, restlessness drove me into the city. Manhattan shimmered with neon, my reflection ghosted in store windows, almost unfamiliar. My steps carried me without direction until I found myself before a small jazz club near the Brooklyn waterfront. Inside, the air was thick with smoke and laughter. And there he was, on stage, bathed in yellow light, saxophone gleaming in his hands. Ethan. When he played, time unraveled. I sank into a shadowed corner, wine glass trembling in my grip. The music poured into me, richer, deeper than in the subway. Each note slid along my skin, stirring heat I hadn't felt in years. And then his eyes found me. Across the crowd, across the haze, they locked onto mine. He played harder, stronger, each note daring me. My breath quickened, my body responded. When the set ended, he came down, his smile soft but certain. "You're here," he said, as though nothing else in the world mattered. I nodded, words caught in my throat. He leaned closer, his scent, coffee, tobacco, night air, wrapped around me. His breath brushed my cheek, and I nearly surrendered right there, in the middle of strangers. We left the club together. Brooklyn pulsed with neon, but none of it touched me. Only Ethan beside me, his shoulder brushing mine, sending jolts through my veins. We walked slowly, stretching the night. His hand brushed mine, and the simple touch set fire racing through me. We stopped on the bridge, the wind cool against our faces. He turned to me, his voice low, intimate. "Clara, your eyes. I could lose myself in them." I wanted to answer, but words tangled in my throat. His hand rose, cupped my cheek, warm and steady. The world narrowed to his touch. Then he kissed me. Soft at first, hesitant, offering me escape. But I didn't want escape. I leaned in, deepened the kiss. Passion flared. His arms tightened around me, drawing me close until I melted against him. For the first time in years, I surrendered. And to my surprise, surrender felt like freedom. I came home at dawn, but his kisses still burned on my lips. I undressed slowly, as if his hands were still there, stripping away every layer of my defenses. I fell onto the bed, staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in years, I smiled for no reason at all. Not because of a case won, not because of recognition, but because of him. My victories in court, my polished reputation, the endless compliments from men in suits, none of it mattered anymore. Tonight, I had won something else. I had conquered myself. When I woke, I almost believed it had been a dream. But the note in my briefcase proved otherwise. I traced the words with my fingertip, and the melody returned instantly. He was already inside me, living in the rhythm of my pulse. I went to the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the same Clara Bennett. There was a new light in her eyes, a softness in her posture, a fire that had long been extinguished. I wasn't just a lawyer. I was a woman again. A woman who wanted. The next morning he was waiting. The station swelled with people, voices, footsteps, but everything blurred the moment I saw him. His eyes found mine, and his music changed, gentler, sweeter, as though the notes wrapped themselves around me. I dropped a coin into his case, and he dipped his head. "You look like you've just stepped out of my dreams," he murmured. I laughed, though heat surged through me. "Do you always say things like that to women?" I asked, teasing, trying to hide my trembling. He shook his head slowly, his gaze unwavering. "No. Only to you." The certainty in his voice stole my breath. I leaned closer, and his whisper brushed my skin like a touch. His presence broke through walls I thought unbreakable. And the most dangerous part, I wanted him to. That evening, he invited me to a small cafe nearby. The air smelled of warm bread and coffee. We sat tucked in the corner, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like a lawyer, or a strategist, or a name on a polished door. I was just a woman on a date. We talked about the city, about our childhoods, about dreams. His world was filled with music, late nights, and freedom. Mine was built on structure, rules, and deadlines. Two different universes. And yet, the space between us dissolved. His hand brushed mine across the table, and an electric current shot through me. I didn't pull away. "Clara," he whispered, his fingers sliding over my palm, "you're too beautiful to live only in paperwork." My lips parted, trembling. It wasn't just a compliment, it was a truth I had been too afraid to face. And I realized I wanted him to go further, to break me open completely. We left the cafe together, stepping into the night. Manhattan glowed, the streets alive with people rushing past, but I felt only his hand holding mine. Silence stretched between us, but it was not empty, it was full of promises. At the corner, he stopped abruptly, turned me toward him, and kissed me. His lips were hot, hungry, and my world collapsed into that single moment. The city blurred. His body pressed mine against the wall, his hands gripping my waist, pulling me closer. It was reckless. Anyone could see us. But I didn't care. I kissed him back with equal hunger, every part of me on fire. His breath mingled with mine, his taste lingered on my lips. I knew it was dangerous. I knew I should have stopped. But instead, I surrendered. And maybe, for the first time in my life, I didn't want to stop. I returned home on trembling legs, my lips still swollen from his kisses, my skin still burning from his touch. I dropped my coat onto the chair, my briefcase to the floor, and went straight to the bedroom. My body pulsed with desire I could no longer deny. I stretched out on the bed, closed my eyes, and let my imagination pull him into the room. His fingers slid over me, slow, deliberate, the same way they caressed his saxophone. My breath came shallow, my back arched, my lips parted with a soft moan I couldn't hold back. The city outside continued its restless hum, but inside, I surrendered. His music played in my head, weaving itself into my body, carrying me higher, deeper, until the world dissolved. When I finally collapsed into silence, I realized something had changed forever. This wasn't just passion. This was rebirth. For the first time in years, I felt alive. Truly alive. And I knew, Ethan was already a part of me. I woke in the middle of the night as if from a kiss. My heart raced, his saxophone still echoing inside me. I sat up in bed, staring at the Manhattan skyline glowing beyond my window. Ethan had slipped into my dreams, into my pulse, into the very air I breathed. In the morning, I dressed differently. Slower, more deliberate. Each button, each earring, each brush of lipstick felt like ritual. And it wasn't for my colleagues or my clients. It was for him. For the man who had somehow become the center of my days. At the station, the crowd surged, but I saw only him. I heard his music before I reached him, and the melody was blazing with heat, with want. When his eyes found mine, he paused, leaning closer. "I thought of you all night," he murmured. The words made my knees weaken. I gripped my briefcase to steady myself, though the truth was, I had thought of him too, only him. And I knew then, there was no more distance between us. There was only the music. And what was growing inside me, stronger each day. That evening, he invited me to a club. The room was thick with smoke, crowded with laughter and shadows. But when Ethan walked onto the stage, everything fell away. He lifted the saxophone, and the first note pierced me like a blade of fire. Each sound was deeper, fuller than the subway's echoes. He wasn't just playing music, he was playing me. Every phrase undressed me, stripped me bare, until I trembled. After the set, he found me at the bar, his fingers brushing mine. "Do you know what you do to me?" he asked, his voice low, rough. I shook my head, though I knew. His eyes burned with hunger, and my body responded in kind. The silence between us was electric, thick with all the things we hadn't yet dared to do. When his lips touched the hollow of my throat, my breath fractured. I gave in, closing my eyes, surrendering to the truth I had been fighting. My body already belonged to him. We left the club together. The night was warm, but I burned from within. His hand clasped mine as if he'd never let go, and I realized I didn't want him to. "Come with me," he said simply. His voice was not a question. It was a command wrapped in desire. I hesitated only a second before nodding. In the cab, our knees brushed, and that single touch made me shiver. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. The silence was alive with anticipation, with fire. His apartment was small but filled with warmth, scattered sheet music, instruments leaning against the walls, the faint smell of coffee and smoke. His world was messy, unpolished, but it pulsed with life. He pulled me into his arms and kissed me, and this time there was no gentleness, no hesitation. His hunger crashed into me, and I gave it back with equal force. We were done with pretending restraint. His hands roamed over me with the same mastery as when he played. Strong, sure, yet achingly tender. Each button undone felt like the pause before a new note. My skin flamed beneath his touch, each kiss dragging me further from reason. We didn't speak. There was no need. Our breaths were the language. My moans the rhythm. His body pressed into mine, claiming me, yet also giving me freedom. For the first time in my life, I wasn't performing, wasn't controlling, wasn't thinking. I was simply feeling. His lips traced the line of my collarbone, and I arched toward him, surrendering everything. My carefully built world, the rules, the victories, the reputation, crumbled into dust. There was only passion. Only Ethan. Only the fire tearing me open and setting me free. I had never known such abandon. And in the depths of it, I discovered something terrifying and beautiful. I didn't want my old life back. We slept as dawn broke, his body warm beside mine, his breath steady. I lay awake, watching him, struck by how quickly he had become essential. On the table, his saxophone gleamed faintly in the light. He played not just for the crowds in the subway or the clubs, he played for me. I reached out, brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. He stirred, opened his eyes, and smiled sleepily. "You're incredible," he whispered. I smiled, but fear coiled inside me. Our worlds were galaxies apart. I was a lawyer tied to schedules and rules. He was a musician, bound only by rhythm and emotion. Could we really last? But then he touched my cheek with a single finger, and my doubts melted. In that moment, it didn't matter. There was only us. When I returned to the office after a night with Ethan, I knew I didn't belong there anymore. The glass walls of the skyscraper pressed down on me like a prison. Colleagues smiled, clients droned on, but all I could hear was the echo of his saxophone. I held documents in my hands, but all I saw were his fingers, sliding over me the way they slid over brass. I tried to focus, but even a client noticed my distraction. Clara Bennett, the lawyer known for icy concentration, was unraveling. Inside me, a fire raged I could no longer hide. That evening, my phone vibrated. A single message lit up the screen: "Clara, I'll wait for you on the bridge tonight." One sentence, and my fate was sealed. I was supposed to work late, buried in files. Instead, my hands closed my briefcase. My heel struck the marble floor as I walked out, my pulse racing. I wasn't running from work. I was running to him. The wind whipped through my hair, the city lights shimmered across the water. Ethan stood on the bridge, saxophone in his hands, playing. The melody was tender yet laced with sorrow. I froze, tears stinging my eyes. When he finished, I stepped closer. "Why so sad?" I whispered. He looked at me, eyes steady, raw. "Because I'm afraid of losing you. You're from another world. I'm just a subway musician. And you're too far above." His words cut through me. I took his hand, pressed it to my chest. "Do you feel that? It beats only for you. That's all that matters." His lips crashed into mine, desperate, hungry. Our bodies clung together as though fighting against fate itself. And I realized, I couldn't imagine life without this fire burning between us. We began weaving our lives together. Coffee and music in the mornings, kisses and silence at night. He slipped into my days as naturally as breath. One afternoon, I invited him to my office. Colleagues stared, Clara Bennett, the untouchable attorney, walking beside a man in worn jeans. Let them stare. Inside, Ethan scanned the polished glass and steel, then turned to me. His eyes glowed with pride. "It's cold here," he murmured when we were alone. "But you're warm. I want you to always stay that way." His words shattered something in me. I kissed him there, among the files and contracts, forgetting the colleagues outside, forgetting my reputation. Passion overpowered rules. For once, I let my desire dictate the terms. But happiness always comes with shadows. My parents found out about Ethan. Their faces hardened, their voices sharpened. "A street musician? Clara, you've lost your mind. You're throwing away your name." Their judgment stung worse than any courtroom defeat. I told Ethan, and silence fell heavy between us. Finally, he whispered, "I don't want to be the reason for your pain." I grabbed his hands. "You're not the cause. You're my salvation." Tears glistened in his eyes. He kissed me as though it might be the last time. That night, we made love with desperate urgency, our bodies declaring war on the world. Every touch was a vow. Every breath, a rebellion. Our worlds remained different. But I no longer feared that. We walked the streets of New York hand in hand, and I knew, people could stare, whisper, judge, but my life was mine. His music became my soundtrack. I heard it in the subway, in my dreams, in the beating of my heart. I was no longer the cold lawyer I had been. I was alive, passionate, unafraid. One evening, we sat by the river. Ethan played softly, his melody tender as a caress. I watched him, my chest full. When the last note faded, he leaned close, whispering, "You are my best decision." I smiled through the night air. "And you are my only choice." The city glowed around us, but it disappeared into silence. Only we remained, a lawyer and a musician, opposites who had found harmony in each.